Well, welcome back to our online Bible study. In this session, we are going to begin 1 John, and this session we'll be looking at the introduction of 1 John chapter 1, verses 1 through 4. Now, some background for 1 John. It was written by John, Jesus' disciple. He is the only disciple who wasn't killed for his faith and for claiming that Jesus rose from the dead. Tradition has it that he was tortured alive, but survived and remained and lived the rest of his life in exile. And so this letter was written between 85 and 95 AD. John was likely living in the city of Ephesus at this time, and this letter would have first been read by the church in Ephesus and the churches in the surrounding city. So 1 John chapter 1, starting in verse 1, here's what he says. He writes, "What was from the beginning, what we have heard, what we have seen with our eyes, what we have observed and have touched with our hands concerning the word of life. That life was revealed, and we have seen it, and we testify and declare to you the eternal life that was with the Father and was also revealed to us." Now, when John says from the beginning here, again, he's talking about the word of life, Jesus himself. This was kind of a turn of phrase that does not mean that Jesus was created in the beginning, but that he has existed from eternity past. He has always been around. And so 1 John is about John telling us about this man named Jesus, who was a real physical person that he and the other early followers of Jesus experienced. It's why he says things like he wants to tell us about what we have observed, what we touched with our own hands, what was revealed to us, and we testify what we have seen, right? John here is telling us what he physically experienced in Jesus and encouraging us from this to go and to follow him. In other words, it's kind of like Peter when he says that followers of Jesus do not follow cleverly devised myths. What he's saying here is essentially you can accept this teaching or what we're explaining to you, or you can reject it, but following Jesus is not about a bunch of feel-good ideologies. Instead, it is something, and it's in Jesus who came in human history and human time, and that we have to do something with what he did and what he taught us. And so again, this is an encouragement to us that what John is talking about here is not just feel-good ideology, but has practical and real implication. And so he continues by saying this in verse 3. He writes, "What we have seen and had heard, we also declare to you, so that you may also have fellowship with us. And indeed, our fellowship is with the Father and with his Son, Jesus Christ." In other words, what he wants us to know here is that following Jesus is not just simply about the forgiveness of sins. Yes, that's part of it, but that is an oversimplification of what it means to know and to experience and to follow Christ. And so again, in verse 3, what he's saying is, I want to tell you these things so that you can have fellowship with us, with fellow believers. But even more than that, I want to tell you these things so that you can have fellowship with God the Father himself, which if you think about it, that's kind of crazy. You know, especially in Christian circles, we're used to this idea that we can know God and have a relationship with God. But if you take a step back for a second and consider that the God, the creator of the universe, actually loves us so much that he came into time and to offer us a relationship with him through Jesus, that's pretty extraordinary, which is why John is really excited about it. In fact, this is why he ends the prologue or the introduction in verse 4 by saying this. He says, "We are writing these things so that our joy may be complete." Right? The purpose of this letter is to spread the joy that can be found in Jesus. Our joy, meaning your joy, my joy, John's joy, those that know, that have tasted and seen that the Lord is good. He is writing these things in this letter to remind us that following Jesus is not an obligation, it is not a have to, but it's a way to experience something greater. In other words, kind of the main idea that we're going to see throughout the book of 1 John is this. To experience Jesus is to experience joy. To experience Jesus is to experience joy. And so he's going to write us and he's going to instruct us to follow him, to flee from sin, and to do all of these things. But to remember, it is couched in joy. Joy that God himself has come and revealed a way for us to have fellowship with him. And so as he encourages us to follow Jesus, he reminds us two things. One, that this Jesus was a real person that came into time, and that two, following him offers us joy. To experience Jesus is to experience joy, and that is what John wants to let us know in this letter.